how you doing? It's Dryden here from Zensport International, and this is actually part 2 of a 2-part video in which I'm covering one of the areas in which we work in. If you haven't seen part 1, then head over and watch that first. There'll probably be a link somewhere here on this video for you to click and go watch it. If you're joining us for part 2, then welcome back. Just to remind you once again who we are with Zensport. We're a team of sports performance specialists. We work internationally with athletes to help improve their performance using something called energetic sports psychology. So we left off talking about training, traditional training, conventional practice, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to move on to the next one, which, for want of a better word, is gadgets. And basically what we're referring to here excuse me, is basically anything non-essential to your training and your sport. You know, there's an awful lot of stuff out there on the market, including questionable supplements, weird gizmos, and I think the current craze is some sort of hologram bracelet, whatever the heck that is. You know, I don't know, and I apologize for my tone, but from my personal experience and from what I keep hearing, both from athletes and, you know, non-athletes, is that the vast majority of these gadgets and gizmos do nothing or very little to improve your performance, especially by the criteria that we're talking about here. You know, measurably, immediately, with long-term effects. Now, that's not to say that nothing that would come under this category wouldn't be worth doing or wouldn't help you perform better, because undoubtedly there are. But it's just that most of these things are probably going to be a waste of your time, money, and energy. So moving on, the next category here is traditional sports psychology. And one of the things I find interesting about this is that despite its proven effectiveness, most athletes and teams don't use any form of sports psychology at all. And I think the perception is that you'd only go to see a sports psychologist if there was something wrong with you or your game, which is absolute nonsense. You know, sports psychology is simply the study of how your mental attitude and your thoughts affect your game. And the cognitive methods that sports psychologists use will usually make a clear difference in your performance, depending upon what methods you use and, of course, who you're working with. You know, some of these guys will be very good indeed, which is why top teams and savvy athletes use them, whereas others you'll probably want to steer well clear of. Finally, before we get to ESP itself, we have over here drugs and surgery, and as should be pretty obvious, this is way out over here on the right in the high risk and probably cost zone, because the risks that steroid use, doping, and the like have are incredibly high, not just to your immediate performance, but to your long-term career, and more than that, your general health. You know, forget about your sport, forget about it. If you're doing stuff which is putting your well-being, you know, present and future well-being at serious risk, then you probably need to sit yourself down and have a think about what you're doing. Now, one of the things that makes performance-enhancing drugs or surgery so alluring to athletes are the very fast effects that they usually have, especially when it comes to anabolic steroids and HGH, for example. Now, the problem is that none of these improvements are without side effects, either immediate ones or issues that don't develop for, let's say, months or years. I could go on longer about this particular category here, but I think I'm going to leave it now. I'm probably going to be making a separate video specifically for the purpose about talking about performance-enhancing drugs more, because it is such a big problem in the sports industry today. So finally, we get to energetic sports psychology, ESP, and in terms of results that are immediate, measurable, and long-lasting, as you can see by its position on this graph, ESP is by far the most effective thing that we have ever come across yet. The results are immediate. Depending upon what you're using ESP for, you can see results sometimes in seconds, certainly in minutes. It's also as measurable as you can get, because it uses what's called a SUD scale that depends on nothing except your own perception of the problem or the area you're working on. And that might not make sense for now, but don't worry, as you learn more about ESP, it will become clear. And of course, the results you can get with ESP are very long-term, long-lasting results. Now, ESP isn't cheap. It's the best thing out there, so naturally you'd expect to pay for it. But the good thing is, once it's been learned, because it's fairly simple, what an athlete can do is they can use it themselves. In other words, they can self-apply it and use it for the rest of their professional careers themselves. But here on the graph, what's pushing it over to the right is the cost. If we were just measuring risk along the bottom here, then ESP, this little icon, would actually be on this line here, because with ESP there is no risk at all. And that might sound far-fetched, but it's for the simple reason that ESP is non-invasive, there's no chemicals, surgery or equipment involved. And this is why professional athletes that use ESP regard it as important to their routine as throwing, running, lifting weights, or anything else that would come under the category of standard physical practice and traditional training. Once again, I've run out of time, but stay tuned because there's lots more videos where I'll discuss each of these things in more detail, and of course in particular ESP, energetic sports psychology. But for now, shoot me some feedback, share your thoughts and comments below, and visit zensport.info to learn more about how ESP can help you in your sport. I'm Jayc Dryden, and this is Zensport TV.